everyone, it's Melanie of Art Studio 320, and this week's project is a 9-drawer dresser. 3 of those drawers are hidden behind this door. And this dresser belongs to the same bedroom set that I've been working with for the last 3 weeks. This is the 3rd week, and I'm planning on doing something completely different than I did the last 2 weeks. So stick around. Would be appropriate to have some Benny Hill music right here. This was not easy to get out of the garage. It kept slipping off. It's a very long piece. Thankfully, there isn't a lot of hardware on this, and all of the hardware that is on it is perfectly fine, so I will be using it again. I tried to capture the many aspects of the demolition of this piece, and the first being, these screws were so tight and the space was so tight, so I had to use a tiny little screwdriver just to give you a sense of the frustration. I did not show every single one. This oscillating tool is the best. Thank you, Phil, for the Christmas gift. This is not the first time I've done this particular kind of demolition, but every piece is so different. This was put together way different than the last piece I did. It was fine. I have plenty of tools. I just had to get up a lot and get the correct ones. And I can't say this enough. Be patient. You will go bananas if you aren't patient, because it takes time and it takes patience. There are so many little things that you have to be able to take out, and lots of different kind of trial and error tools to see what works. These staples were so long. Look at how long they are. I do suggest you take some time before you start taking things apart, just examining your piece. What is structurally important to the piece to stay, and what can be taken away? And you know, those middle pieces there, I thought about taking those out, but then I would have lost the door, so I needed to keep those in, and I decided to make 3 separate compartments. This is the 3rd piece in this bedroom set, and this top was nothing like the other 2. It was so hard to get all of that top coat off and stain. I know it doesn't look like it, but it took me forever. This door is the focal point of this piece, and I wanted to be sure to get as much of that top coat and stain off as I could. This was tedious work, but it was well worth it. I wanted to put legs on this piece, so I wanted to take off this skirt, and man, it would not come off easily. But there were a few hidden screws, and I took those out, and eventually it all came crashing down. Just remember to inspect your piece before you take anything off. Melange has a paint called Restoration Bronze, and I wanted to make that with fusion colors. Sorry, Melange. First, I tested with a very tiny bit of paint just to see kind of how much I would need of the chocolate brown into the new color Everett by Fusion. And as you can see, I'm not putting much in. Once I had the color I wanted, I mixed it in a larger quantity, and the one on the right is the one that I wanted to make. If you watched my video last week on the armoire of this same bedroom set, I did something similar, but I'm using different colors, and I decided to use stain on the bamboo in the center. Yes, it's bamboo, and these are the colors of stain that I decided to use. Now, I like to use stain in a lot of different ways, including using them similar to what I would do with paint. And yes, you can do that. I chose a pattern that went all the way around, kind of an optical illusion. since it was already there. And I wanted to use quite a bit of white, more than the other colors, just as a contrast color. And I think that worked really well. It shows up, it pops, and I am very happy with the results of this one. And you can do it any way you want. Thankfully, unlike the top, the rest of this piece was very easy to sand. I used my mixture of Everett with a small amount of chocolate brown to create this color, and I wanted to use it as a wash on the oak trim. Again, there are so many different ways you could do this. You don't have to do it one certain way. For variety, I am going to paint the sides here. As I was starting to paint, I wanted the front to have a little bit of contrast, so I used Algonquin on the trim in the front. And the drawers were basically miniatures of the larger trim on the piece. I asked Phil to help me with the measuring and the cutting because I spent over $100 on these side panels that are specifically for kitchen cabinets, so they hike up the price because of that. They are perfect for lining the inside of what I want to be a dry bar. But I was behind. My talents are not with cutting and measuring, and I didn't have time to get good at it, so I asked the master. So after Phil was finished measuring twice and cutting once, I took the panels and stained them so that they would be ready to insert here. So I'm trying them out, and you can see in the back there's a white bar there, and there's a couple more. Phil cut specific pieces of wood to make everything even in the back, so that when I put the panels in, they would lie flat, they would have something to be glued to. It's very complicated, and I'm lucky to have a husband that's a carpenter. Not only did he measure twice and cut once, he also marked all of the panels so that I would know which one went where and which way they went. You'll notice there's spray paint cans underneath the panel where I'm gluing. That's so I can keep that panel flat and it will adhere to all of the glue. The wash I'm using is mostly water. It's not a lot of water, but then there's a little paint mixed in, and really, again, you can do this however you want, however much color you want to show, how much transparency you want in your paint. I like to go back after I've painted and just patch up with wood filler in those areas that you might not see until you've painted. And that's totally fine, you can do that. I created another wash for the top. I decided to use Goddess, which is a creamy white. It's not a true white, it's very soft, and I thought that would help lighten up the piece a little bit, but also keep it nice and rich. It's Thursday, and I've already run kind of behind this week because some things came up last night when I was getting the panels ready. Phil helped me with that, and then today I dropped a jar of paint, a full jar. I have video of that. It doesn't begin to show the damage. I've already cleaned up. I've begun to sand this and wipe it down, but there was paint all over this. There's spots all over the front, so I have to redo all that. And I had already glued this down, as you saw, and the paint splattered all over this panel. I wiped it off, but you can see that there's a little bit of a cloudiness. And frankly, I'm in shock because I always say there's nothing that you can do to your piece that you can't fix for the most part, and that's true, but oh my God. I was getting so close to finishing. I've had setbacks for sure, but oh my God. I've never had paint splattered all over an almost finished piece. I am grateful that big long one for the back did not get splattered because it was in the garage. The door that I did all that work on, if that had gotten paint on it, I don't even want to think about it. Stick around. Moving on. I am now going back and sanding all these areas that I need to repair. So I'm not going to show a lot of this. What I'm doing now is I'm putting glue on all of those bars that Phil specifically cut so that everything would be even when I glue in that back panel. And this is the moment. Oh my goodness, this was so frustrating. Lots of words were said. I stop, I go get Phil. He helped me get it in. It was really, really tight. It fit perfectly, but there was a bit of damage. The side panel here, on both sides, right here, there's a gap between this and the end of the panel because there's blocks in here you can't really see. There's a block in here and down here, and it will keep the panel from going flush to this. So I need to use some more blocks so that the panel has something to be glued to. And Phil cut these for me. I just need to cut them down to size so I can put them on here. The panel can be glued to the side onto something. Otherwise there would be a big gap and it would bow. So I don't want that. I wanted to give you that last thing because that's what happened in the back. Phil cut down some blocks and they were all different sizes to make it all one size, if that makes sense. It's confusing, but hopefully you get the point. I am measuring that space for those bars that I need to glue that panel to. So I'm measuring the panel and just cutting the bars down to size. There are two different ways I could have put those bars. I could have put them horizontal, and I chose vertical because of gravity. I didn't want to have to hold those bars in place, and by standing them up that way, they seem to adhere pretty easily. Once I had those bars in place and they were dried, then I could start putting those panels on. But I'm checking on the dividers in the middle because I have 3 separate compartments that I'm wanting to make. And this middle section had this piece that I had to sand down in order for that panel to fit. Now I did some sanding on both sides so that I could kind of, get it down, but you can see that's what I'm working with, and I needed to get it enough that that panel would slide in there but be snug, because I wanted it to be snug so when I glued it in it would be a little easier to glue. Here's some more last touches with the wood filler, and these are the center panels. So in the center both sides are going to show. So I painted the inside and I had those panels facing in to the compartment in the middle because that's where the door was going to be. And I used the chocolate brown, and actually it looked way better than I thought it was going to look. It looks like a dark stain. I also needed a trim for the panels in the center to adhere to. They're not big, but I also have a bar that I'm going to put on the top. And I'm also using that trim in the back to cover up the seams where the edges are a little bit frayed from being cut. I want to make sure that all the seams were tight on the bottom where you could see them, and so I used some very long shims to push those panels down so there would be nice tight seams around the bottom. I am now ready to put in those center dividers, and I have those little pieces of trim with the inside long part facing in, and that's where I am gluing the panel on the bottom, and also I will put a bar on the top, and you will see that too. This took some patience for sure. It also is a point where you have to be really meticulous about, getting that glue off of little areas that it oozes out. You want to make sure you have enough glue, but you also want to make sure you're not getting glue in spots where you're going to see it. I like Tite Bond, but you will be able to see it after it dries. Here you can see that tight seam, really nice, really well cut. Thanks again, Phil. Now here you can see there's a gap in the front here. I'm cleaning off the glue, and then I had to keep pushing that towards the panel. It was kind of resistant to that, so I had to hold on to that for a while. Now here I'm putting in the top bar. You didn't see on the first one, but this is the second one. And I put it up once, and then you'll see I have to glue it again because it did come down once. And I wanted you to see that because it happens. I was messing with the corner because I saw some glue, but I couldn't leave it alone, and then it fell down. There it is. And I put it back up. They stuck pretty easily considering they were suspended on the ceiling of this thing, and that's the Tite Bond. This is what's left of the splatter when I dropped the paint. I wiped it up as much as I could, but yeah. Fusion dries pretty quick, which is good, except when this happens. So I'm going to take 2000 grit and sand it lightly, and then I'm going to put a little bit of stain over it, hoping that will be enough. Putting in those little pieces of trim on the back so that everything is nice and finished. Now these little pieces of trim I'm putting in the front to cover up the seams where the panels hit the front. A couple of pulls. I spray painted a couple times, and the second time when it dried it did this. This one was like it too, but the steel wool seems to help. Kind of dulls it, but that's okay.
much better.
Oh, I love to repurpose. This is the wood that I took off of the skirt around the bottom. And now I have discovered that I can use them to put in place so I can place my feet on top. To get this wood to lie flat, I had to get rid of some of the hardware that was in there, the long screws that I showed you in the beginning of the video, and a couple pieces of metal that were used as biscuits to connect. This is oak wood, which means it's very, very hard wood. So I have what Phil calls a pointy bit. It's a drill bit, but it has a point on the end, so it drills so smoothly through even the hardest woods like oak. So I'm pre-drilling everything before I put on the feet. While I had the piece upside down, I decided to install the wine glass holder, and I needed to add a little bit of wood to the piece so that the wine glass holder would come down far enough so that you wouldn't hit your glass on the trim when you're trying to put it in or take it out. I put 3 coats of polyurethane ultra flat on the top because I wanted to make sure that it was nicely protected. I also put 2 coats on the trim so that that would be protected as well, and the drawers, of course. You can check my channel for more information about how to apply top coat and how to sand in between to make sure you have the nicest finish possible. Well, friends, that's all I have for you this week. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you to Phil for all of the measurements and the cutting, because that really helped a lot. There were a lot of pieces on the inside here that needed to be fitted just right, and he did a fantastic job of doing that. I am so thrilled that this is finished. Wow, this was a challenging week. It was worth all the time and effort. I learned a lot, and I think it is a good combination of a 70s retro / modern. I think it would look great in anybody's home as a dry bar. I hope this inspires you to go out and find your next project. Take it home and take on the challenge. Thanks for being here. Good luck on your next project. See you next time.
You can do it.
If I wrote you a song, if I got every word perfectly weighted on a thin piece of paper, would it make any difference? Would it change for the better? If I wrote you a poem, if I posted a letter?